So I think we are live. So thank you everyone for joining us today. My name is Hannah Sinaway, and I'm the Executive Vice President of Organization Strategy and Engagement with IAVA. And I'm joined today by two very special guests. The first is Karen Brash, and she is a member of IAVA's Board of Directors. And she also serves as the Senior Director of Business Management at Safara Inc. So thank you so much for joining us, Karen. We're also joined by Alex Verholtz, who is the Talent Acquisition Military Program Manager for Leidos, who is a trusted partner of IAVA's. So again, thank you so much for joining us today. So this event is really going to focus on veteran transition, employment, and career development. And before I hand it over to Karen and Alex to do some introductions, I want to share a little bit with the audience about our Quick Reaction Force program. So QRF is our 24/7 peer support, comprehensive care management program, and we really focus on veteran transition. So we are here for any veteran, any family member, whether that's providing help during the transition from military to civilian life, or whether that's down the road after. So we help with anything related to employment, education, accessing mental health benefits, kind of anything and everything that folks need, we're here for you. So I just want to give that as a reminder as we kick off this event. And I know we'll put this information in the chat, but just to share now, we can be reached 24/7 by calling 855-91-RAPID or digitally at quickreactionforce.org. So I would love now to hand it over to both Karen and Alex to do some introductions for the audience. Let us know a little bit about why you're here today and what we can look forward to learning about from each of you.
Sure. Go ahead. Okay, I'll start with introductions. My name is Karen Brash. I'm a Navy veteran. I had 10 years active duty, 10 years in the reserve. Based out of San Diego the entire time, a couple of deployments based off of the Nimitz. And I had a really interesting transition experience, which is part of my passion here. It wasn't textbook and not recommended. So I'll be your example of I would do this differently today. But we'll talk a little bit more. I'll let Alex introduce himself too, and I'll talk a little bit about the transition and some tips and things that I think would be really helpful. And then very much looking forward to questions as we go.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Over to you, Alex.
Yeah, thank you. So my name is Alex Verholtz. I am the Talent Acquisition Military Program Manager at Leidos. So I plan to do a short presentation a little bit later, just on Leidos capabilities, some of our core competency areas, and give everybody some kind of some best practices when navigating our positions and our career site. I've been with Leidos for the last 10 years and have been running our military program for the last 6. So we're a pretty large company, about $12 billion, 40,000 total employees, worldwide government contractor, a lot of different types of roles and opportunities. And certainly we both support the military community, veterans, military spouses, transitioning service members, and we recruit heavily from the veteran and military spouse community. So I look forward to presenting a little bit more about Leidos and our different opportunities here, and look forward to engaging with those of you who are attending. And thank you everybody for attending today.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So as a reminder to folks that are tuning in right now, please feel free to drop any questions into the chat, and we will have 2 different opportunities to take questions. I think Karen is going to have to leave at around 4:30. So we'll do a Q&A portion as we lead up to that mark. And then as Alex mentioned, he's going to do kind of a comprehensive overview of all the great services that Leidos has to offer. And we'll also allot time at the end of the event to do question and answer portion there. So thanks again to both of you. So Karen, I'd love to throw it over to you and get some insights about lessons learned, your story, kind of anything that you want to share with us. I think we're really excited to hear about.
Yeah, I'll just start with a little bit more on so today I work for Safara, my new company. I'm very excited. So I just got recruited by a startup off of LinkedIn 3 months ago. And it's the whole veteran transition, I think, leads up to how I got to that point. It's an amazing job. It couldn't have been a perfect job if I'd written it out myself. And it came out of everything that built from my experiences. And I think one of the things transitioning, especially transitioning out, I guess I was a lieutenant commander when I transitioned out. And I didn't realize the job process was going to be so difficult. And I didn't go through all of the networking. I did some of the preparation. So I left active duty. I went straight to Booz Allen Hamilton. I was there about 5.5 years. And then I went to Qualcomm here in San Diego. I was there almost 12 years. From Qualcomm, I went to Intuit for 3 years. Intuit's the maker of TurboTax and Mint and QuickBooks. And I did 3 years there. And then it was just recently I was recruited by a startup that focuses on mobile safety and telecom technology. It was a very meandering road, not what you think when you're getting out. And I think one of the biggest questions everybody has, I did too, is what do I do next? Especially because what you do sometimes in the military, most of the time doesn't translate, obviously, to the commercial civilian environment. And some of us got out and want to do something completely different. And some people, you just want to keep doing the same thing you're doing. You're used to that family feel in the military. Everybody wants to feel like they have a sense of purpose and they're providing value. And it's a whole lot of, well, what's next? I know I want to do something else. And there's a couple of key things that definitely help. I think one of the biggest questions people ask all the time is, how early should I plan? I'm a planner, so I'm always going to say early. I know some people just decide really last minute, hey, I'm going to get out. And the tips don't really change, whether you're planning ahead or you're getting out like, hey, I'm going to, ask, I'm at retirement date or I'm at the end of my contract. I can leave. What happens next? It's still the same thing as far as the networking. It's just how much runway do you give yourself and how much time do you spend? People think, should I get a certification? Should I get a new education? Should I get a degree if I don't have one? Should I get an advanced degree? And a lot of that ends up with the answer of it depends, because you may not know what you want to do. For those who went to college and you're going into your 4-year college program and you're a freshman and everybody, including your parents, are asking, hey, what are you going to major in? And a lot of folks are not even sure what they want to be when they grow up at that point. It's kind of that same thought, right? You're transitioning to a new chapter. How do you take those skills with you, package them up, and that next dream job? And I think being flexible with how soon do you get that dream job is going to be really important, because I think looking at it more, especially looking backwards, it's really, where can I get experience and learn about how you want to build up your dream job, whether you want to own your own company, be an entrepreneur, for example, or do you want to go to something small as a startup? Do you want to go to a big corporate, and what do you need to get there? And I'll just pause there for a second, because I think that's kind of a blanket, more generic statement, but that people are already thinking about.
Absolutely. Alex, do you have anything to weigh in kind of on what Karen has done an overview of? I think, everyone's situation is different, and planning ahead, I mean, overlooked, right? So want to include you in this conversation, Alex, if you have anything you want to weigh in on.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a big proponent of the backwards planning process. So, for those that are attending today, everybody may be in a bit of a different position. But, for those of you who are in the, currently transitioning from the service, or maybe you just have an availability time frame coming up based on different factors, maybe you're graduating, maybe, you're just looking to begin kind of like the next chapter. It's all about kind of setting that specific date and then kind of working backwards from there. And there's a lot that goes into it, and certainly, we could do a whole nother, presentation just on that. But everything from setting up your network to utilizing platforms like LinkedIn, and to making sure that you are also giving yourself as much credit as possible for your accomplishments and for basically the work that you performed, and identifying anything that might be a gap, right? So sort of looking at the types of opportunities and the types of skill areas that you're interested in pursuing in the civilian world, and then seeing, is there anything that that seems to be missing, right? Whether it's a certification, whether it's a, advanced degree, maybe it's a security clearance or something like that. And then kind of doing that self-assessment of, okay, what are my current qualifications, right? What do I want to do? Big picture, kind of Karen mentioned, right? Like dream job. What do I currently have the qualifications to do, exiting the service or starting my new career today? And then how do I kind of bridge that gap moving forward? Whether it's pursuing, like I said, pursuing an advanced degree or pursuing education, certifications, or just gaining more experience. Security clearance is a little tricky. It just, it's the short answer is it's always going to depend on the position and the program and what avenues there are there. But kind of doing that self-assessment of, okay, what am I qualified to do now? What would I want to do in the future? And then, what do I need to do to get there? And at the same time, sort of having both a short-term and kind of long, short-term goals, long-term goals, as far as your career goes, understanding that once you're kind of in the space, so, the government contracting industry, for example, once you're kind of in that industry and in the customer space that you're going to be working in your civilian career, it becomes, a little bit easier to sort of navigate within that than when you're coming right out of the service or right after, maybe graduating college and what have you. So just kind of getting into the environment that you're looking to continue your civilian career in, and then being able to kind of look at, the long-term planning process of what do I need to do to kind of get where I want to be, 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road. And those are all great things to not only know, but also to, impart during interviews and during discussions with employers too, so that you're showing that you have a plan and you're also making certain that that employer, has those types of available opportunities and that path for success and progression that you're looking for in your career as well.
Yeah, I'm going to double down on the experience part that you're talking about there too. One of the things I do with my mentorees, I mentor veterans that are transitioning. And one of the things we do is just an exercise. Like if you check out a piece of paper right now, it's really kind of the whole world is open. You're still in the military. If you're transitioning, you've got some time. In theory, you've got runway. It's as important to know what you don't want to do as well as what you want to do, right? And you could take a piece of paper right now and just off the top of your head, write down, what are the 5 things that I'd like to do? You may not know. What are the 5 things I don't want to do? You know that. Most of us know transitioning out what we don't want to do. But it's really also the second exercise, and we do this as a longer exercise, but the second exercise really is, what are my skills? What am I good at? And not just, everybody has a fit rep, what you think you're good at, what others think you're good at, but ask your friends and ask your family, hey, if you could say 3 things that I'm good at, what is it? And it might be the most random things and have nothing to do with a day job, but it does, because those things coming back at you, maybe your family jokes around and says you talk a lot. Well, maybe communications is a thing that you're naturally good at. And the reason I say that is you're looking for a place to transition to land where you can gain experience. Go somewhere where you already have those skills is going to help a lot, right? And as opposed to just completely starting over. And it's also the same as, what are you not good at, right? If you're not a tech person, do you want to go to a tech company? Where are you going to be a better fit? And just those 2 exercises, they sound really simple, but once you start writing that stuff down on paper, even if you just hit the top 3, it does start to kind of open your eyes on targeting, maybe I'll go for these companies. Do I want to work at a company that's got an amazing culture? That was really big for me. I wanted to work at a company that had a great work-life balance and a culture and different opportunities. So I'll just pause there, but exercise, try.
Yeah, that's a good one. We hear a lot from clients from our quick reaction force program that, there are all of these tips and all of these resources, and I'm so overwhelmed, and maybe I have a confidence challenge, and oh my God. So how do we break it down for someone who's experiencing that as really these first steps of how to kind of suss this out?
and where to start looking, right? Like where do you start? I always start with those exercises just away from all of the noise, because once you start getting online, it gets really confusing. You're going to be inundated. And what's so great, and even more so than when I transitioned out, is there are a lot of people out there to help right now transitioning, right? IAVA is here to help with the transition. I love the program that Alex is talking about that Leidos has. A lot of companies have those programs. So what I would do first still is out away from all the noise, do your own reflection of what do you want? What do you not want? You know, where do you live? What are you willing to settle for? And it's anytime that you go into a negotiation, training will teach you in negotiation of, you know, what are the boundaries and what's that line you will not go below, and have that really clear in your head, because that's going to give you confidence when you start looking around. Right. And so I remember when I came out, I was looking at project management or product management, didn't know the difference between the two. You know, I mean, I didn't know anything actually from the corporate world transitioning out. I was in school that helped a lot. I went and got a graduate degree that exposed me to a lot of things the corporations talked about. But I would start with do a self-reflection before you go out and start inundating yourself with all of the different avenues. And then I would pick one or two that really resonate with you. So as you start looking at, you know, hey, I could do the QRF with IAVA, right? For DoD Skill Bridge is great. I'll put a plug in for that because I think that's one of the coolest programs out there as far as active duty transitioning. For those of you who don't know, it lets you work 6 months while on active duty interning for a company unpaid, but gives you that opportunity to get experience with the potential of getting hired by that company. And if not, walking away with that skill set. But that doesn't help if you don't know what it is, you know, if you don't have a good idea of what you want or what you don't want. So I would start there and then pick one or two and try not to get too distracted or overwhelmed, and go down a couple of paths first before you start. You know, there's a lot out there right now, which is good and bad.
Yeah, there is a lot out there. Pivoting a little bit, and this I think is a great question for both of you. How are things from your perspectives kind of shifted with COVID and remote work? And I think there's a certain level of uncertainty and anxiety among people who are, you know, trying to navigate employment and career and wondering, has the landscape totally changed? Kind of just any insight that each of you have, I think would be really helpful.
Sure.
Yeah, you go first, Alex.
Yeah, so something that we had begun doing, you know, actually a few years ago, is actually pushing a lot of our what we call indirect or overhead roles to be full-time telework or, you know, basically like hybrid type positions, right? Where maybe you're in the office, you know, a couple days a week and then working from home, you know, the other 3 days or what have you. So these are roles like talent acquisition, which I'm in, like human resources, business development, even some of our program management roles, you know, for the work that maybe didn't require work in a cleared facility or something like that. So there's quite a bit of work that we do that's not directly on government customer site, and that's not necessarily, you know, full time, you know, 100% direct bill to a government customer, that had already kind of begun being pushed remote and is going to, you know, continue to be, and certainly, you know, has been for the last, you know, 15, 16 months now. For the work that we do that's directly at a customer site, so that could be a military installation, it could be, you know, a government facility that's maybe marked, or maybe it's, you know, not marked as a government facility, depending on the classification of the work and whether or not that work is classified. That work has continued to, you know, to be done on site. You know, some of the different agencies are starting now to relax their restrictions so that the work environment can go back to, you know, basically 100%, you know, 5 days a week. Whereas before there were, you know, sometimes rotating employees, you know, 1 week on, 1 week off, things like that, or not allowing more than like 50% capacity in a certain building. So as far as kind of like the path forward, for the work that, like I said, for the work that we do that's directly at a customer site, a U.S. government customer site, and certainly for the work that's for the work that we have that's cleared, that's going to continue to be on site. But with, those other positions that I mentioned that kind of had slowly begun to be getting pushed remote even prior to the pandemic, it's going to continue like that. So while we still certainly have Leidos buildings and Leidos facilities that are outside of, government buildings and outside of different installations, you are seeing more and more work just being, like I said, either 100% remote or, maybe it's, 50% or 75% remote. And what we've also done is on our career site over the course of the last couple months, we've kind of overhauled our Telework filter. So our career site has several different filters where you can select different choices that'll help you kind of narrow down what you're looking at as far as career opportunities. And one of those is telework. And now we have basically different percentages listed. So if you look at 100% telework, then those are going to be positions that are, 100% remote work from home. And then, like I said, there are maybe ones that are, 50% or 75% or something like that. So part in an office, maybe part travel once, once our travel restrictions are kind of are up here internally, and then also part kind of work from home. But that's kind of the path forward. And I think it's, again, government contracting is a little different because there is so much work that's directly kind of on site with that customer. But, in general, for a lot of corporate positions and a lot of, like I said, our kind of indirect type roles, moving forward, you're going to see more and more of those be either full-time or at least part of the time work from home and telework.
What are some of your thoughts on this, Karen?
It's going to depend. That's a lot like what Alex said. It's going to depend a lot on the company. And when you have government clients, you need to be, a lot of those need to be on site. I did that work both at Qualcomm and Booz Allen. So I get, that's a hard one to work around. My company's 100% remote. There are a lot of companies that went remote and are staying 100% remote. But the trend I see, what's probably going to happen, if I had a crystal ball, is as many companies as possible. For those who work from home for the last year and a half, we're already ready. A lot of folks, the majority still wants to get back into the office, at least part-time. So I think you're going to start seeing, it's going to go back probably slower. I don't know if it'll ever be full-time on site again, but that's where I see it going is, so there'll be remote positions. I know that we're hiring and what we're doing is we're hiring remote, but it'd be really great if you worked in one of these areas because we're trying to group folks so we can get back to an office environment at some point where there's a little bit, the collaboration is just better. So the depending on what your role is, work from home, it works sometimes and other times. There's nothing that replaces the actual being in person. So I see it trending back. It's just going to trend slow. So.
All right. Thank you. So Karen, I want to be mindful of your time. I think we have you for 5 more precious minutes. Field a couple questions if that works for you. So the first one is, where can I go for information about continuing education or certifications that might be helpful for me once I transition?
Great question. Boy, there are a lot of places. This is the worst answer ever, so I apologize, but it depends on what you want to do, right? So depending if you're going into some kind of tech certifications, and even if you just go in, I know LinkedIn's got a lot right now of references, but if you went into Google, what I'm going to pitch IAVA's QRF program because they've got some great resources in there. There are plenty, if you went to like a local college, for example, just Googling a college, go in and look at a job description of what you think you want to do. Like, hey, I want to be this person. Go read that job description. It's going to tell you the certifications that you need. And I would start there. I know that's kind of backwards, but it's a huge shortcut to just guessing in the dark. So yeah, having an idea of, project management, I want to be a software engineer. I want to be a fill in the blank. Google those job recs and go down to the bottom and look where those certs are in the education. I would start there.
Great. tips. The next question is, how soon before I transition out of the military do you recommend that I start planning for my civilian career?
Ideally, it would be a year out, which would give you time for education and certifications. Even 6 months out is great. It depends, again, what you want to transition into, but having certifications helps, but that's not necessarily a deal breaker. That's not the first thing I'm looking for, other than I'm looking for experience. So when I go through resumes, and I've been through hundreds, I will say, do not put any military acronyms in your resume they don't understand. A lot of it is you just opening up your mind to, I'm going somewhere different and new. You want to take the skills that apply, like leadership type skills, any tech skills, et cetera, but leave out the acronyms as you're doing that moving forward, because we'll look for an education. Certifications are nice, but not always important to have. A lot of it is, what have you done? How can you articulate your experience is so much more important than a certification that you don't have experience using, right?
That makes sense. Thank you. And then a final question for you, looking back, what is one thing that you wish that you had done if you could do it over?
I wish I had networked. I'm thrilled I got an advanced degree, but I really wish I had networked. And I have a lot of people come through. Breaking into corporate companies with a military background can be really tough. If there's no military, if you're not a government contractor, they don't understand the military resume. They want to hire Facebook or Uber or, LinkedIn, any of those companies that are known. And so I wish I had networked more, because a lot of those folks, hired managers, can get you in the door, right? I work at those companies, but and at Intuit, I ran the military and veteran recruiting program there as well. And I would go out and, reach out to these folks and bring them in and introduce them and translate their skill sets, but network so someone can help translate your skill set.
Wonderful. Well, Karen, thank you so much for joining us today and everything that you shared. We're really grateful. If any other questions come up, even though Karen is signing off here shortly, please drop them in the chat and we will get them answered to the best of our ability. So thank you so much again.
Thanks, Hannah. Nice to meet you, Alex, and good luck to everybody out there. Thank you. Thanks.
Great. So Alex, we can pivot over to you. I know you have a presentation that you are ready to share with the audience. Is there anything else that you wanted to respond to based on the earlier conversation, or should we dive right in?
No, I think, no, Karen did a great job of providing some great answers. I would just say, something that, I've found it can be really helpful is just kind of, regardless of how far out you are, it's going to be one of the most difficult things is going to be trying to get everything that you've accomplished down on, digitally, right, in a resume. So just kind of like understand that your resume is going to be a constantly sort of shifting document, and that, it's something that really isn't ever complete, right? You don't sit down and say, okay, I've got my resume done. I've got everything I've done in my, entire military career. I'm good to go. And now I can just focus on submitting that everywhere and anywhere. It's really more about looking at the different kind of core competency areas and the different skill areas that you want to focus on in your civilian career, and maybe having different formats for each of those, right? And then understanding that even that will then need to be pared down and targeted to each specific job. So I think there was a question earlier just about sort of, how do you start or where do you start? And, my recommendation is to, start small and, don't allow yourself to kind of become overwhelmed early in the process. So start with just a small number and handful of organizations, companies that you're targeting. Try to focus on a career search that is a little bit more targeted. And honestly, if you're struggling with where to start with who you know. Start with people that are out in the civilian world, right? Start with maybe companies that you're aware of, or maybe organizations that support you in your military career. Odds are you came across, several different companies and probably know quite a few individuals who are working at companies, right? So kind of start there and then get yourself comfortable and acclimated with the job search process. And then as you get more comfortable with, tailoring your resume and going through the job application process and things like that, it's all pretty time consuming and labor intensive, but you'll get better at it each time. Interviewing, much the same way, you'll get better at interviewing each one you do. And then as you get more comfortable and familiar and it becomes a little bit more, a little easier and a little bit more straightforward, then you can start looking at, okay, maybe I want to expand my search and expand the number of companies. But with the ability to apply to, any position from, anywhere in the world using, your phone, it's a double-edged sword. It's beneficial in the sense that as a company, right, we can quickly get our positions out basically, to anyone, anywhere, right? All they have to do is basically use their cell phone, and all of our career sites and most organizations are like that, where, career sites and websites are optimized for mobile. So it makes it really easy for us to get our positions out there, right? But what that leads to on the flip side is so many applicants, right? So that's where I say, kind of as a job seeker, start small, start with companies, start with companies where you have points of contact, and then you can kind of slowly increase your search from there. So what I wanted to do was, I'm probably going to kind of trim down my presentation a little, just being cognizant of time. And I want to make sure that I allow some time for any questions. So I'm going to do kind of a shortened version of a quick presentation on Leidos, on our different capabilities and kind of our reach. And then certainly want to leave some time for questions here, because I know we've only got a little under 30 minutes left. So let me share my screen and should be good.
Great. And while you're doing that, just as a reminder to anyone watching, we're eager to answer any questions. So please feel free to drop them in the chat and we will field them towards the end of the event.
Okay, and I think everybody should be able to see this. If there's any issues or it stalls or anything like that, just please let me know. But I kind of jumped forward a couple slides just because I want to give everybody sort of a brief overview of Leidos, of our kind of our company history, and then I just want to hit our kind of main groups, or what I kind of call our different business lines of business. And then, like I said, I want to leave some time for questions. And my contact information is going to be on the last slide, and certainly I can provide that to anybody who's interested. And I will certainly provide that to Hannah and to the organizers here today if anybody wants to reach out to me. But like I said, the last slide will have my contact info and my LinkedIn address. So really quick, just about Leidos in general. I kind of covered this in my introduction, but just want to give everybody an understanding of the company and kind of a quick recap of our history. So Leidos we are 52 years old. We are over half a century old. Basically, the company was founded back in February of 1969. But the reason you may not have heard of Leidos or seen Leidos prior to 2013 is we were known as SAIC from 1969 to 2013. What we did was in October of 2013, we spun off a portion of our business and essentially divested a section or a group, which then became a completely new and separate company. This is something that's pretty common in the industry and in corporate America. What was kind of unique in this case is that instead of having the new company take a new name, they took the existing name SAIC, and we took the opportunity to rebrand to become Leidos. So as Leidos, basically that name has been around since October of 2013, but as a company, we've been around for 52 years as of February of this year. To give you an idea sort of the growth that we've had recently. So when we spun off what is now SAIC, back, I guess that was about, 7.5, almost 8 years ago now. We were about a $5 billion company, and we were around 17,000 total employees. So you can see we're now over 12 billion, and we're north of 40,000. I think we're closer to about 41,000 right now. So you can see we've grown significantly over the last, 7 to 8 years. We've done that primarily through acquiring new business. So we have acquired, in some cases, entire companies. We've acquired divisions and sections of other companies as well. So we've been really fortunate to be able to continue to kind of grow both organically through winning new business and through kind of increasing our presence on our current programs and contracts, and also by acquiring new companies or existing companies, I should say, and acquiring different divisions of organizations. So we've grown significantly, and will continue to do so. With that growth, we've been able to maintain a good percentage of veteran employees. We're just under 20%, about like 19.4%. So still around 1/5 of our employees are veterans, and we have right around 8,000, I think just too shy of 8,000 veteran employees within the organization. And you can see there, the second paragraph, a little bit about our military program, which I run. The short version really is that our military veteran program, or Operation MVP, is essentially, exists to help transitioning service members, to help, veterans, to help military spouses in navigating their career search, and essentially helping to navigate the opportunities that we have here at Leidos. All right, so I'm not going to spend too much time on all these slides. Like I said, I really want to leave time for questions more than anything. You can kind of see there, some of this we already covered. One thing I'd like to point out in this slide, though, is that if you look there on the cleared employees, you can see it's basically right around half of our employees, right, are going to hold a security clearance. So what that means is that while we certainly have quite a few positions that are going to require and allow you to leverage a high-level security clearance, as far as top secret and above, or even at the secret level, we have plenty of opportunities and positions that do not require any form of clearance whatsoever. So I think sometimes that's a common misconception just about government contracting in general, especially a company that is publicly traded as an information technology services company like we are. While we have a lot of cleared IT roles, we by no means are only a technology company, and by no means do we only have positions that require a high-level security clearance. We have a lot of opportunities in a lot of different areas, that many of which, like I said, will not require any clearance whatsoever. All right, so real quick, those are our four main groups, right, or business lines at Leidos: civil, defense, health, and intelligence. I'll get to each of these in a moment, but you can kind of see the different, the revenue and sort of the size of each of the different groups. When I go through them, they're kind of straightforward and self-explanatory with the customers we support, but I'll try to give you a little bit of more information as far as the different kind of skills and different clearance levels that fit into each group. Probably the best way, if you ever wanted to target positions supporting, health, for example, if you go to our career page, I mentioned the Telework Filter earlier, you can select different filters on the left-hand side of kind of your career search. One is the group filter. And so, for example, if you wanted to see, well, I just want to focus on Leidos's roles in health, you could select the health group and just look at those opportunities there. What I would recommend, regardless of whether or not you're searching, a specific group or type of, want to focus in a specific skill area, is to definitely use the clearance filter and the location filter because both of those will really help narrow down the number of opportunities you're looking at. Being that we're, pretty large organization, we have about 4,000 positions posted at any given time. So just, kind of using those different filters to help narrow things down. Similar to what I said about focusing on just a handful of companies, focus on just a handful of positions to kind of start, that you clearly can articulate how you meet all of the mandatory minimum qualifications for. And then, as you get more comfortable and acclimated, you can kind of look at some of those positions where, maybe you need to do a little bit more tweaking and tailoring of your resume or something like that. Or you're just kind of curious as to what might be available kind of down the line or something like that. So as far as our reach, we are in all 50 states, and the next slide is going to show you our global reach. Close to about 40% of our employees are at customer sites. I kind of covered that already. As far as the work that we perform, right, at a military installation or at a government facility. The rest of our work is either at a Leidos building, Leidos facility, or it's a work from home opportunity. Some of the locations that we have work are going to be spelled out here on the map. You can see Reston, Virginia. That is where our headquarters is. So that is why that's bold. But, regardless of where you're located or where you're looking, or if you're looking to potentially relocate or move back home, we have opportunities there. As I said, you can see on this map, we are in all 50 states. All right, and globally, you can see, about 1/10 of our work is going to be OCONUS, and we have work all across the world. We are in over 400 locations when you combine the work that we have overseas with work that we have within the United States. So a lot of different opportunities all across the world and all across the country, nationwide and worldwide. If you're ever targeting a specific location, whether it be an overseas OCONUS location or a particular city state, I would just recommend when you're looking at our career site to focus on that particular country or that particular city and state, and you can see what opportunities we have located there. All right, I'm just going to speak a little bit about each of our groups and then, see what questions we might have here for the last 10 minutes or so. So you can kind of see there some of the customers that are mentioned within the civil group. The civil group is basically the work that we do that supports federal civilian customers. So these are essentially your government agencies and government entities that kind of fall outside of our other main groups and kind of fall outside of a focus on health and fall outside of the DoD and the intelligence community. So, you can see some are listed there. Basically all of the other, federal government and government civilian type opportunities fall under the civil group. So there's a lot here as it relates to security, logistics, certainly information technology. If there's one kind of through line throughout all of the different groups, it's going to be work that we do supporting IT and IT services. But there's certainly, far more in each group than I could hope to cover. But you can kind of see here that a lot of it does focus on aviation and transportation. And as I mentioned, IT, security, logistics. The civil group is one of those groups where you're going to find a lot of positions that don't require a high-level security clearance, if at all. Most of these positions can be covered with a public trust designation. So, like I said, there's quite a bit of work that isn't going to require high-level security clearance or any security clearance. And most of the work within our civil group falls under that. All right, so defense, pretty straightforward. This is the work that supports primarily DoD. You can see there's some work that we do supporting the United Kingdom as well, that falls under our defense group, but is kind of firewalled off and operates under a subsidiary of ours. called Leidos UK. So for some of our positions where we are providing services to a kind of a foreign, foreign nationals, we are using kind of a subsidiary for opportunities like those. So for example, Leidos UK, Leidos Australia, Leidos Europe are some of the subsidiaries we use so that we can hire for those particular programs and hire individuals who are, foreign citizens. But at the same time, there are opportunities for US citizens on several of these programs as well. But within DoD, a lot of work here supporting information technology, supporting intelligence, certainly supporting cybersecurity. A lot of work here also supporting aviation and transportation as it relates to aviation, and work here supporting intelligence and analytical services from all the service branches, but especially within the Army and the Air Force. A lot of work within the defense group is going to require a minimum of a secret clearance. Much of it will be up in that top secret level of security clearance. Because like I said, when you get into some of the intel work and some of the work supporting like Army INSCOM, for example, you'll find that there's work that requires a high level security clearance. But quite a bit of work within the defense group, especially, is in that sort of IT services umbrella. And we have a couple large programs, one with DISA and one with the Department of the Navy, where we're constantly and consistently looking for individuals with information technology backgrounds really all across the country, and even oftentimes in the Pacific theater as well. So a couple others before we open it up to questions. We do have a kind of a research and development component to Leidos. I mentioned our being founded back in 1969, and a lot of the work that we did in those early years related to scientific research and development, work supporting space exploration, lasers, different ways of harnessing energy and things like that. So we've really maintained a presence within scientific research, within R&D over the course of the last 50 years. A lot of those PhDs, you saw we have over 1,000 employees with doctorates. You see a lot of those employees kind of fall under the Dynetics kind of group. Dynetics is basically right now a subsidiary of ours that's in the process of kind of being fully integrated. It's a company based in Huntsville, Alabama, that we acquired in March of last year. And as I said, are kind of in the process of integrating and then also migrating over what our existing work that we had prior to this acquisition in scientific research, in both contract and internal research and development, and then kind of fitting all that together and making sort of a fifth type of group here, basically. And the last couple that I definitely want to mention, health is a very large group and has seen significant growth over the last about 5-6 years here. We are heavy into a number of areas in health. Health IT, you can see there as being recognized as a top 3 health IT provider. A lot of work supporting electronic health records, both for active duty service members, their families, as well as for veterans through work we do with the VA. So there's a lot of work here from an IT standpoint and from sort of a servicing standpoint of existing electronic health records, as well as creating and developing and integrating new EHR interfaces and software kind of moving forward as well. And a couple other things we do within the health group that I'd be remiss if I didn't mention. We have a very large program providing military family life counseling services, and basically mental health counselors, and providing kind of counseling services to service members and their families all across the world. And we do quite a bit here as well in biomedical research and infectious disease research, which is certainly very prevalent right now. So health is pretty broad as far as kind of what we do within the group. But as I said, it's continued to grow. And for many of the roles, that are focused on health IT, you don't necessarily need to have a clinical background, but it certainly helps. And then, as you look at some of the more clinical roles, whether they be, psychology or related more to, biomedical research and infectious disease research and things like that, some of those positions require more of a clinical type of background. And to kind of round things out here, the last group I want to mention is our Intel group. And this is basically work that we do that supports the intelligence community. So again, pretty straightforward. This work is all going to require a high-level security clearance for the most part. The majority of this work is with classified customers, and you're essentially supporting, those various three-letter agencies, the majority of which are in and around the national capital region, kind of that greater DC metro area, but that also have facilities, either at installations or just kind of other government, facilities across the country where this classified work is performed. A lot of work here is certainly in analytic services, intelligence analysis, but a lot of it's in cybersecurity and also work supporting software development, software engineering, and basically implementing IT information technology tools and systems within the intelligence community and building out new software applications and tools to use for those analysts and for those individuals who are kind of forward deployed supporting the intelligence community. So as you can kind of see, Leidos is very broad in the different service offerings that we provide the government. So it's kind of a, there's two sides to it, right? There are quite a few different opportunities at all different types of clearance levels and all different types of competency areas. But at the same time, we don't necessarily focus on just one thing. So while it's allowed us to be flexible and maintain growth, even as many in the government contracting industry are consolidating, sometimes it can be, to be honest, it can be a little bit challenging as someone from the outside, as a job seeker, trying to sort of see where you can best fit within Leidos. So, understanding that, certainly that's why I want to make myself available. Certainly you can reach out to me after the fact here and contact me directly. Get to the next slide with my contact information. And, and at the same time, like I mentioned, just kind of utilizing the career site and some of those filters and some of those, some of the different kind of methods for helping to narrow things down and kind of starting your search that way. But the best thing you can do is what I mentioned earlier, is kind of do that quick self-assessment and say, okay, these are my current qualifications and skills, and where do these match up, and kind of where do I want to focus now? And then also kind of looking at big picture down the line. Okay, does Leidos have opportunities maybe for me to move into after I've been in this position for a few years or what have you, and things like that. So I definitely wanted to leave a little time for questions, and I appreciate everybody staying with me and letting me present a little bit on Leidos. We are, like I said, a large company and a very broad company. So, tried to kind of just give you a very high level overview of the different opportunities and kind of capabilities that we have. But yeah, very much would like to try to provide some answers to any questions that we might have in the few minutes we have remaining.
Great. So we've had some questions come in, Alex. Thank you so much for that presentation and all the information that you just shared with us. The first question is about transitioning service members and expectations for salary when they transition out. Should they expect to make more, less, or the same? And also any kind of insight around negotiation for salary?
Sure. So the best thing you can do is, as you kind of come into looking for work in the, in the civilian world, is to have a salary range. And this is no different than if you're in my position or any position, right? Out in corporate America, and you're looking at potentially, new opportunities and things like that. You want to know what your value is, right? What your worth is. But keep in mind that a couple things. One is that your salary is commensurate on the qualifications of the position you're looking at. So what I mean by that is that if you have 20 years of experience and you are looking and applying to a position that requires 5 years, that position is going to pay for 5 years of experience. So you want to kind of keep that in mind, right? And you want to try to marry up the best that you can, right? And give yourself credit and take advantage of the experience that you have. And at the same time, right, you want to also understand that there's other features and benefits that fall outside of just salary, right? There's sort of that total compensation package. So these are things to kind of keep in mind too, that, will play a part outside of just what that salary is. But what you can do is a couple things. You can look online, you can look at different sites to maybe give you kind of a baseline of what your salary expectation should be, but sort of have a range, a low end and high end. Keep it around, no more than maybe $5,000 or $10,000 difference between your high end and your low end of your salary range, and understanding that you want to be comfortable and ready to accept a position, if it comes in at that low end of the range. And this is another benefit to starting early, because, as you go through the process, you'll find out pretty quickly if you're either pricing yourself out or if you're, if you're coming in maybe too low or something like that. So kind of base your salary range on the position that you want to, the position that you want, right? And that experience level that that kind of you're looking for. And also kind of keep in mind that it's going to also depend based on the geography too. So depending on where you're looking, your salary range that you kind of provide is going to be slightly different. But really the whole negotiation aspect, although it's possible, it's really not as prominent, I think, as maybe some people might think. It's really, like I said, if you come in with a range that fits kind of that experience level of the position you're looking at, the recruiters, especially in the government contracting industry, with the number of positions they have, they're gonna look to bring you in right around that midpoint so that they can give you room to grow, room to get a cost of living increase or a raise and things like that. And the negotiation aspect is really not as prominent, especially in the government contracting industry, as maybe it might be in others. But yeah, it's all about having that salary range up front and being able to provide that to those recruiters you talk to, right at the beginning of the process, so that you've got that squared away, so that when you speak with the hiring manager and go through the actual interview, you're focusing just on the position and the responsibilities and how you're the best fit.
Great. So we have a couple more questions that I'd
Sure.
love, if you have a few extra minutes to spare.
Yeah.
Great. So the next one is, if my security clearance has expired, does Leidos provide an opportunity to gain a security clearance if I have found a role I like that requires one?
Right. So with clearances, and this is a question that comes up quite a bit, my best advice is really just focus on positions that are at the clearance level you currently have. There may be opportunities to get clearance sponsored, whether it's for that particular program or just down the line. But you really, you can't go wrong as long as you're focusing on, positions where you meet all of the mandatory qualifications, right, to include clearance. So if maybe you had a clearance and it's fallen out of scope or it's lapsed, right, these are certainly things that you can bring up when you're discussing potential, employment, and it's not going to hurt, right? It's only going to help. But at the end of the day, you still want to focus on the clearance level you have, right? So if you don't currently have a clearance, you just want to focus on those positions that don't require one. That being said, if it is an opportunity where that particular program may provide sponsorship, or maybe there's a sponsorship opportunity down the line, then, as I said, it's only going to help the fact that you've held one previously.
Great. The next question is, how long is the application process?
Yeah, it just kind of depends on, as I kind of mentioned earlier, as far as like, your familiarity with it and how acclimated you get. I will say just, going through the applying process with any company, it can be a little time consuming and labor intensive, especially when you're just starting out. Plenty of organizations, ourselves included, will try to kind of parse your resume or parse information maybe from like your LinkedIn to help fill out some of the necessary information when applying. But what I really recommend is give yourself kind of like a cap or a limit when job searching, whether it be time or whether it be, I want to focus on, applying to, this many jobs, or I want to look at opportunities with, with this company for a given time period. Kind of give yourself a cap, because the thing about, I kind of mentioned, right, is that you can quickly become overwhelmed, and you could really spend, it's, a full-time job, right, looking for a job. So try to kind of give yourself a cap, whether it's time or whether it's, I want to apply to, 3 to 5 positions a night or something like that. And as I said, keep it small, keep it targeted, make your applications count. Because there's kind of like this illusion, right? That if you've applied to a whole bunch of jobs, right, then, it's kind of that illusion of progress, right? And really, you're better served spending your time focusing on a handful of positions where you can tailor your resume and you have the ability to follow up with somebody, whether it's somebody or somebody you've met, or at least had kind of a virtual introduction to. You're far better served doing that than you are just hammering out a whole bunch of applications every night and then just hoping somebody comes across your resume. So give yourself some time. Like I said, there's no real length of time, but it is, at least especially when you're starting, it can be pretty time consuming. So that's why I kind of mentioned starting small, and then once you kind of get, once it becomes like second nature to you, then you can kind of add in some more organizations and stuff like that. And one other thing really quick about that is, even if a company or somebody reaches out to you, especially if you're just starting in the process of looking for a job and you're unsure about it, or you're not sure about maybe the commute, or or even some of what's involved in the position, go through the process, right? Let the hard choices be made for you. And if and when you get through the entire process and you're presented a job offer, right, well, then you can sit down and make that decision. But especially when you're early in the process and you're just trying to get comfortable and familiar with how it works, and doing like the phone screen with a recruiter, and doing an interview with a hiring manager and things like that, it all helps. The experience helps. So go through the process even if you're not sure, because it could turn out that you could get convinced that the role is something that you feel you can excel in and that you're interested in, and even if not, it's been a helpful learning experience for you as you kind of move forward.
Wonderful. Well, Alex, thank you so much for being here today and the incredible information that you provided for everyone. Alex's information was up there on the screen. We'll also throw it in the chat for folks that want to read.
Please.
And just want to thank you again, and thank everyone who was able to tune in and learn from today.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. And please definitely provide my information to anybody who is interested. They can certainly reach out to me or ping me on LinkedIn as well. And you can certainly feel free to provide out that information that I kind of ran through very quickly to anybody who's interested as well. So I want to thank everybody for attending, and thank you, Hannah, for kind of hosting today, and for having me on. It's been a pleasure. And thank you again.
Same. All right. Take care, everyone. Thank you, Alex.
All right. Thank you. Bye, everybody.